Welcome, everyone, to the program EdTech Mondays Nigeria, brought to you by the MasterCard Foundation in partnership with Co-Creation Hub Limited. The EdTech Mondays is a platform to facilitate critical conversations on the use of technology for teaching and learning by bringing together key stakeholders, including policymakers, EdTech entrepreneurs, teachers, and of course, parents. My name is Joyce Daniels. I'm a social engineering practitioner. I am honored to be your host on this show. Today, we'd like to have our opening remarks by the lead regional center for innovation in teaching and learning at the MasterCard Foundation. Welcome with me, Suraj Shah, for this first episode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for EdTech Mondays Nigeria. For those of you who may be new to this platform, the MasterCard Foundation is a private foundation, one of the largest in the world, that has opted to dedicate the bulk of its resources over the next decade to enable 13 million young people in Africa, particularly young women, to access dignified and fulfilling work. In Nigeria, the goal is to enable opportunities for 3 million young people, 70% of whom we hope to include young women. But the task of enabling work is complex. It requires a multifaceted approach and an extensive collaboration. At the Foundation, we recognize that education is inextricable from issues related to jobs and employment as the primary way we prepare young people for the world of work. We also know that in today's world, technology is central in helping to enable, facilitate, accelerate, and scale the efforts needed to deliver opportunities for young people. So we have a number of initiatives dedicated to solving challenges facing the education sector, including the Regional Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in ICT. Now more than ever, it is clear that ICT has a key role to play in the building of resilient education systems and enable learning. And yet, most young women, both in Nigeria and across the continent, do not have access to the devices, the infrastructure, or platforms they need to make digital learning a reality. This inequality has implications for the young women's future, and that has become abundantly clear during this pandemic. So this particular EdTech Monday focuses on how we can bridge the gender-digital divide to expand access to education and to ensure that digital opportunities are available equally to girls and women as they are to men in Nigeria. Ultimately, this is a conversation that involves or touches on all of our lives in some way. And so I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope that this session will be informative, challenging, and inspiring for you as we consider that all that we can do to address the issues we'll be discussing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suraj, for your kind words. We look forward to so many responses, positive responses from our audience to this program. Thank you once again. So honored to have you here with us. Our theme or topic for today's episode is enabling young women's leadership, the role of EdTech. And if you're wondering what EdTech is educational technology. How can this enable young women's leadership? The year 2020 exposed the barriers that millions of young African women face to successfully accessing technology-enabled learning, whether these barriers are from household responsibilities that place demands on the girls, and so they don't have time, or barrier of limited access to devices at home when male users are prioritized, or perhaps exposure to gender-based violence that undermines the physical and mental health of these young girls, which inhibits learning. This is on top of the general challenges faced by young people, which include poverty, lack of energy infrastructure, limited access to devices, and more. Yet, we know that investing in young women is key to unlocking the potential for prosperity within communities and countries. We also know that education is key to improving economic outcomes for women and positioning them for leadership. The International Women's Day provides us with an opportunity to reflect on how we move forward in addressing these various challenges and the role that educational technologies have to play in expanding education access to girls and young women. How can EdTech developers ensure their products are gender-friendly? And of course, as COVID-19 continues to accelerate digitization, how do we ensure that the digital world will be as much a woman's world as it is a man's? The March edition of EdTech Monday will tackle these questions and more. So stay with us through the show, provide us with your feedback and connect with us on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at CcHUB Nigeria. Today, we have a fantastic array of panelists. Please allow me introduce and welcome them. First off is Ms. Adetola Salau, who is a social innovative entrepreneur, global educator, author, and transformational agent. She's currently the Senior Special Assistant on Education to the Governor of Lagos State. She's also an engineer and the author of more than 10 books, one of which is a roadmap for transforming mindsets of African children, which is called Reengineering Minds for Innovation. We also have with us Oreoluwa Lesi. She is the founder and executive director of the Women's Technology Empowerment Center, a nonprofit which is committed to building a more inclusive technology ecosystem with the next generation of women technology creators, entrepreneurs, and leaders. She has designed high-quality programming for over 31,000 girls and women, many of whom have been inspired to pursue science, engineering, and technology careers. And we also have with us Temi Oluwadare. She is a marketing communication strategist and user experience researcher who is passionate about the application of digital media and communication in development contexts. She currently serves as the head of marketing communications at Hitch, a Nigerian-Canadian edtech startup building an educational video platform for Nigerian students and teachers. Welcome, welcome to me, welcome Ore, welcome Adetola. So honored to have you here with us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Joyce.
Thank you for being here.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome, thank you. Now, some statistics that we hear are absolutely mind-boggling. Like 1/3 of girls are out of school in Nigeria, amounting to over 5.5 million school-age girls not in school. This is according to UNESCO in 2014. According to the Nigeria Education Indicator 2016, primary school completion rates for girls is 64.8%, while that for boys is 70.8%. In other words, boys who start primary school are likely to complete more than girls. So my first question is, so we know that an economy case is often needed to advance what is morally right. What are the benefits of improved education access, especially for girls? And conversely, what are the costs of not doing so? Ms. Salau, please, we'd like to hear your thoughts.
When you think about the fact that girls are pretty much half of the labor force, and this labor force, all the economic indices tells us this labor force has to be quickly brought up to speed with the skills that are going to be needed to perform really, what's the word I want to use? And I don't want to make it sound like it's going to be impossible, but they're going to be really challenging jobs. And these jobs and tasks that we're going to need for all of us in society so that we can be able to survive, thrive, and pretty much be successful. If you're going to deprive 50% of that force from not being able to be a part and contribute, then you're already hindering the economic capability of society at large. They won't be able to contribute, they won't be able to add value, they won't be able to bring what they have I was at a secondary school, senior secondary school yesterday, and I was giving them the various roles that young ladies, women play in the global force now. And I was mentioning how, we're at the conscience of society. And I mentioned to them that, do you know that all across the world, in some areas, the ratio is 40. In some areas, it goes as high as 80%. In some areas, the labor force, I'm recalling the numbers, the labor force for agriculture, for the contribution for women is 40%. And in some areas, it goes all the way up as high as 80%. And I was telling them, agriculture, that's food. That affects each of us deeply. I was explaining that if you get up this morning, you were coming to school, and I told you were not going to eat, that's going to affect you the whole day because you're a student. You're only going to be thinking about food. You won't be able to perform at full capacity. And I said, you guys are a huge part of our being able to create that food. They're a huge part of that chain in creating that food. And I was explaining to them that what 40% means. You see, when we talk percent, it's really hard to conceptualize that. But when you use money, yes, when you use the numbers, when you use money and use things that they can see, I started using examples like, oranges and coins. And when I did that, they understood how big it was. And then you're saying that you're going to now deprive being able to give this huge percentage of this force the skills that they will need to create and help us sustain change and value and economic capacity for all of us at large. It's not going to add up. So it's really important that while we're equipping the young boys with those skills so that they can be a part of that force, and the other specters of our economy, because it's not just agri. I mentioned agri because that's one of the areas that's going to affect us adversely across the world. But of course, this area really highly. If you're going to only give boys the skills or young men the skills, and you're going to deprive women of those skills, you're really going to be shortchanging all of us.
Thank you very much. It is not sustainable for us to keep the number of women in education low, or the women who are educated, girls and women. It's just not sustainable for us as a society. So, as the world embraces remote learning, how can we ensure we deliver it inclusively? Orelua, please share with us your thoughts on this. And after that, I'll ask Timmy to please also jump right in to tell us her thoughts on how we can ensure that we deliver inclusive remote learning.
All right. Thank you so much, Joyce, for that question. It's a really big one. And I think that this is something that cannot be done by one set of actors alone or one sector alone. It has to be done in a partnership, a private-public partnership across different industries. I work in civil society, and civil society, has been working hard for many years, but we also need to partner with people in education, the government, definitely, the corporates, telecommunications. It's really important. So I'll tell you what I do in my organization. So we are running programs to get more girls into technology, attracted to technology, and committed to pursuing a career in technology and the wider STEM, actually, and also giving them the support, the mentorship, and the guidance that they need to go from wanting to work in these fields to actually studying and then working and thriving successfully in these fields. Now, last year totally changed everything.
Okay.
I always say that for an organization that is focused on delivering quality technology education, most of our learning was done in person because number one, for the sets of stakeholders we were working with, the girls we were working with, a lot of them don't have access at all to the devices, to the internet, to make online learning a possibility. So, and then also in terms of teaching, for the age group that we work with, it's also better delivered in person. But last year, COVID did not give us an option. We had to shut down and we had to basically move as many of our programs online as we could. And then that's when we realized the gravity of the situation. We found that most of the girls we were working with, so we had programs in Lagos, in Kwara, and Ogun State. A lot of them did not have internet-enabled devices. Maybe if they have access, it belongs to a parent, it belongs to a guardian, somebody older. Or when they were in school, they had access to the computers in the lab. But at home, they didn't have access to any of these devices. So we found that we were not able to work with a lot of girls. What we tried to do was we tried to use tools that are more readily accessible. So delivering learning on WhatsApp, recording videos, sending it on WhatsApp, then having like an office hour, office time where, we can chat, we can ask questions. That worked for girls who had access to phones, basically, that had WhatsApp. Then for some of our other beneficiaries, we were using things like Zoom, Google Classroom, they were good. But I think that at the end of the day, we need to have a way to make these devices affordable and accessible to the girls, who need them. And whether that's in partnership with corporations who can donate these devices, or and I think another thing that we can look at is creating cells, especially for the girls in secondary school or the girls who live, in communities, close-knit communities. We can think about creating cells where these devices are available. So it could be like in a public place, like in a church, a mosque, a public library, a space where, many young ladies have access to. So it doesn't even have to be in the school. It can be outside of the school so that the young ladies are able to come here, they're able to use these tools for their learning, for their empowerment. And then that way, many girls in the community have access to it. Okay. What you find is you find corporates who are donating laptops to individual girls or maybe to schools, which is great, but it limits the use to just the people who have access to those spaces. So we need to start thinking beyond that in terms of public spaces, more accessible to girls and boys as well, and where they can use these tools.
Okay, thank you. More accessible, more affordable, and possibly communal use. Thank you. Temi, what are your thoughts about how we can deliver more inclusive remote learning for our girls?
So I will start more on the technical end to begin with. I would say there's room to include girls and women at every stage. So from development of the technology to delivery, and then in the delivery and development, there's room for consideration, and consideration not just in thinking of women, whoever is developing the tech, thinking of women, but also in including them in that development. So for example, I would use what we do at H as an example. So last year when the whole world was kind of put on hold with everything happening, right, and schools were on lockdown, we had initially launched with battery-powered hotspot devices. But with COVID, we pivoted and said, okay, with these battery-powered devices, students can't really access this because it works with in-person learning, right? So we pivoted to make our web app available online for free. Well, with that, we had to consider the reality of those we're hoping to reach. So the students, parents, teachers. And in considering that reality, one of the things that would come up is, what is the reality of, for example, female teachers or women at every stage of this, right? So women who might be teachers, girls, girls, students who are girls, who are at home, who may not have access to technology to actually get access to our online app. Teachers who, for example, have that burden of home care as well, along with the responsibility of having to reach their students from home. So we had to consider the people we're reaching at every stage and then say, okay, how do we adapt this technology to their context? How do we consider their reality as we develop technology to solve these problems, right? So I think that's one of those things that, and ideally we would say have women developers, have women as in the process as you're developing whatever technology, have women who can provide that other content, that other perspective, right? Another thing is that Ori has said is collaboration. So the reality of things, especially with education, is that one person can't solve every problem and everything is connected, right? If we're looking at gender-based violence, we have to make sure that students, teachers, students have safe environments to even learn at home. Because with remote learning, you're assuming that there's space, there's access to devices, and there's even a safe environment to learn,
Conducive
right?
environment.
Exactly. So, and I think these are pathways for collaboration on different ends. So if one person, for example, if HH is providing the technology, there's room for us to collaborate to provide solutions to those other problems, right?
Okay.
So yeah, so collaboration and inclusion. Inclusion goes a long way. It's weird with technology. It's not, this conversation isn't just happening in education. It's happening across the board. You can't create tech for people without involving them in the process.
Okay. Right? Ms. Salau, please, your thoughts on this.
I think we have to make deliberate strides. We have to make deliberate programs. Whenever we are having programs that we are giving devices, we have to make sure that our ratios are equal. For example, if we're saying we're going to give, I'm just going to give a random number, we're going to give out 1,000 devices in that neighborhood school. We have to make sure that 500 will go to boys and 500 will go to girls. Oh, sorry, I have to keep reminding myself, young ladies, young men, yes, 500 will go to each of them. We have to make sure. It's really, really important that we hone this over and over in the mindsets of these young men and these young ladies, that they are on par, they're supposed to work together, and whatever we're giving to one, we're giving to the other. Complement. That's all they are. They're complementary, they're working together. The only way we're going to be able to create this kind of future that we want is by us working together. It's not women doing it alone or men doing it alone. It's both of us doing it. So when they're seeing us do that, when we go for these programs, we're making sure that as I'm giving the devices, I'm giving the same number. As I'm creating spaces for programs, we're giving the same number. It will keep on being drummed into their heads that, guys, we're supposed to work together. We are supposed to work together. We're equal. We're together. This belongs to both of us.
So it's our responsibility to make it happen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So let me send this question across to Oreoluwa. In creating technology, what would it mean to ensure technology is developed and deployed in a gender-sensitive way? And please tell us if you've seen any such examples anywhere.
All right. So first of all, it means that you need to have teams that are diverse, teams that represent the world. The world is made up of men and women. The world is made up of Black and whites. The world is made up of, rich and poor. And we all have these different experiences. And these different experiences, they're shaping the way we think. They're shaping the things that we need. And so it's important. So I think it shouldn't be just about, let's get more women in tech, but it's let's democratize tech so that tech is a space for everyone, regardless of what background, gender, religion you are, because you are bringing something valuable. Yeah, I mean, you have, women who have, I always, talk about the Apple Watch. When the Apple Watch first came out, it was meant to be this device that basically provided holistic health information about your body. But then there was one thing it didn't do. It didn't give the ability to track periods. For any woman, that's very important. I have like 3 apps that I use to track my periods. And so imagine having a device that's meant to be like an all-round health tracker. And it doesn't even track something that is so fundamental to women's bodies. Of course, by the time the first version came out and then, it was pointed out, then, of course, by the time the next version of the Apple Watch came out, it now included a period tracker. So, I think, that's an example of how women need to be not just obviously the users, but the developers. And then the tools also need to be tested on very diverse groups of people. I know so many young women who are doing amazing things, developing software, developing web content, and they're bringing their own unique perspective, their own gender sensitivity to it. So that's just an example of how our different perspectives and experiences can help to shape and create better, I think more rigorous and, better received tools.
That will give us better results in the long run. Thank you so much, Oreoluwa. To all our listeners, we'd like to remind you to please share with us your thoughts. Connect with us on all our social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. go to at CcHUB Nigeria and tell us what you think about the conversation going on. So a few more statistics here that I'd like us to explore. According to a youth survey report issued by the National Bureau of Statistics in Nigeria, young men are twice as likely to have a career in computer science and technology-related fields as women. In Nigeria, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, women make up an average of just 22% of the total number of engineering and technology university graduates every year. According to the same source, women make up roughly a fifth of the total number of people working in the information and communication technology sector. This clear disparity starts much earlier when female enrollment in technology and engineering courses of Nigerian higher institutions is lower than that of men. So this means that men are shaping the technology being developed while women are largely passive users. But as you've said, we need to include more women. So my question now is, what proportion of EdTech developers are even women? Why does this representation really matter in the field? And what's the danger in underrepresentation of women within this field? How do we address this? Temi, would you like to speak to this?
Women's participation in education, I wouldn't say passive, but then we see a lot of women being educators. But in EdTech, on the development end, those statistics that you just mentioned ring true. Because on the development end, if you're looking at who's developing the tech, there aren't a lot of women leading that development. So EdTech is the future of education, right? And what is education? The way I look at education all the time, I see it as what it is. It's a process of socialization. It's key in shaping our idea of the world and how we communicate, how we understand things, how it now goes into accessing other things, how much money you're likely to make, how your freedom of choice, your career, what you can do, right? And education holds all of that. So the danger in underrepresentation is that we're building technology, we're building education, new technology that doesn't serve women because it doesn't include women, right? And that goes down into not considering existing barriers, because if you don't have people who understand, if you don't have women developing that technology, you most likely don't have people who understand certain issues. So what are the existing barriers in education? What are those the same barriers that exist in in-person education, in-person learning would now translate to remote learning and EdTech, right? So those major problems, gender-based violence, poverty, the fact that women are less likely to study science because of maybe gender norms, or the fact that they're not prioritized in a home where maybe there isn't enough money to send all these kids to school. The male children are more likely to be sent to school, right? And what are the reasons for those things? I think some of those reasons, it's education. It's in letting people know that, okay, there's a room for women in technology. For example, visibility. Let's even talk about women who are there, because there are women developing technology. I'm the marketing communications lead at Hitch, but I'm also a user experience researcher. That's in development. That's part of it. I inform development of our technology at Hitch, and I think the more we speak about the women in leadership, and also reflect that in the technology we're developing. So for example, at Hitch, we develop content, educational content. One of the things we've been considering recently is reflecting cultural norms in the content. So I don't know if you resonate with this, but then I know at some point online, someone shared a textbook that had shown a woman something. It had reflected gender bias in some way.
Yes.
It said something about women being or just a woman and a man. Woman is a home
For
is a
cooking,
caretaker.
caretaker at
Exactly,
home, and taking
exactly,
care of the
exactly.
children only.
So that's what we would have said. Okay, it's a traditional educational tool. But then those things would reflect in education technology because we're just moving into, okay, we used to develop educational content before, we're moving into tech now. So it's the same thing that needs to be considered. And these things would in turn reflect in how people are learning and how students and how teachers, our mindset.
Yes.
All right. The mindset reflects in technology we develop.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Our mindsets reflect in the technology we develop. So we do need more women if we will create more gender-friendly technology. We'd like to say thank you for that. To all our listeners, once again, we'd love to engage with you. We'd love to hear what your feedback is, what your thoughts are. So please connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at CcHUB Nigeria. And look for the sections on EdTech Mondays program posts. Tell us everything you think and let's know what solutions abound for us. To all our speakers, Temi Oluwadari, thank you for joining us today. Aurel Lualesi, thank you so much for making out time. And of course, Adetola Salau, we're honored to have had you here with us. We look forward to seeing all of us next time on our show next month. Please watch out.